Hello there, and welcome to our coverage of the Netflix series 100 Years of Solitude. I'm Steve Barnes from Introvoid and Sweet Child of Time, and here is, from one of my stories, your host, Lindsey Dunn. Ahoy there, Lindsey.
Ahoy, Buendia.
Buendia, Buendia. How are you enjoying this episode, Lindsey?
This was another Barnes burner, Steve. There's a word in the book world we talk about intensifying. So, you can have a fast-paced thing that's just fast-paced the whole time, but I feel like this series is intensifying as we go along. The first episode seemed kind of slow, kind of felt like, what's really happening? But as it's going along, it's getting more intense. It's intensifying. So it was a pretty exciting episode.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think this was an A-plus episode. I really loved it. And it really reinvigorated my liking for Aureliano, because he was a stand-up guy in this episode. This episode is episode 6. The title of the episode is a spoiler. The title of the episode is Colonel Aureliano Buendia. So I'm sorry to spoil the episode right at the beginning here.
Well, you even saying it's a spoiler is kind of a spoiler, Steve, because we knew when episode 1 that this man's name was Colonel Aureliano Buendia. So sooner or later, more was going to be revealed about how he got to earn that title.
Right.
But we already knew that that was his name.
Yeah. And this is interesting because did you get a chance to read any of the book? I'll ask you first before I talk.
No, Steve, they took it back. They, in the library world, because they don't want to give you late fees. If there's a hold on this audiobook, what they do is when your date is up, they just return it. There's no choice. So I had to put it back on hold again, and I'm back at the end of the line. So who knows when I'll get to pick back up again.
Well, we're very pirate friendly here on the podcast, and I can email you a PDF if you'd like, because that's what I've been reading.
Steve, this podcast is pro-library. How dare you? We're in favor of librarians and libraries and supporting our local libraries.
I have what I consider a small business. So don't you support small businesses, Lindsey? What I wanted to say about this chapter is this is just the tail end of the last chapter. This is the last 4 pages of chapter 5 is what we're watching here. And it's surprising because it just goes by so quickly. I mean, it's very dense text that we're talking about. There's no dialogue in this. But I mean, it's interesting that they took that and made it into a whole episode, because there's so much that happens and it's just so short in the book. I was just wondering if you were reading it, if you maybe blinked and passed all this stuff. But I guess what I wanted to say was you not having read this is okay, because this follows, not in the same order, but this follows the book exactly. There's only one small difference, and I'll discuss that difference when we get to it. But for my research, of course, I read the book, watched the episode both in English and in Spanish, and I did a 3-legged stool approach to this. And I also did my Colombian Civil War history, which I'll discuss at the very end of the podcast if we have time, or maybe I'll discuss that in episode 7. But it's funny that the Civil War and the things that are occurring right now in this episode are occurring in 1899, Lindsey. That's right. 1899 right now. And this is the beginning of the 1,000 Days War in Colombia.
In 1899, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So, that beyond that, I don't think I had anything else at the get-go. I'm glad that you enjoyed it too, because that was my first question here. You said you had some feedback, though. I know I have a little bit of feedback I wanted to go into, but I feel like I've been talking. I want to give the floor back to you.
We had a question from Kirsty Reiki on Instagram, and she asked, what is the name of the music the pianola plays in the episode Daguerreotype of God? And this is the scene when Pietro is teaching Amaranta and Rebecca how to waltz. And I found the name of that piece of music, Steve. It is Waltz Opus 69 number 2 in B minor by Chopin.
Ah, Chopin. Okay.
Yes. And this particular song was written in 1829. And this show has an original, composer writing original music as well, which we've mentioned in brief. The name is Camillo Sanabria. And the score is fantastic, by the way. But this particular piece was by Chopin. And what was interesting was this user, Kirsty Reike on Instagram, she asked me what the name of this song was, and then she said, "Oh yes, I know how to play that song, but I couldn't remember the name of it." So she actually is a pianist and plays music, but she hadn't played the music in a while. And I guess I could keep my secrets close to my vest and come across as a brilliant person who just knows what music is off the top of my head. But I wanted to let you know, Kirsty Reike, that what I did was I used the credits at the end of the episode. So you can do that too. Just when that episode is going to roll over and go on to the next one, you can watch all the credits. And usually music is at the very end. Because sometimes, there are websites that are really good at letting you know. Like, for instance, when we did Dark, there's websites that let you know exactly at this scene, when this happens, this is what the name of the song is. But in a lot of cases, the best way to find out what music is featured in an episode is just to look at those credits at the end.
Like I've told you before, I really like when the episode's over, I'll just continue watching the credits because it's always like 6 minutes of like music at the end. Here's a fun suggestion. If you're watching it on Netflix on your television, and do what I do. Instead of rolling to the next episode, click on, watch credits and then hit up Shazam on your phone while you're sitting there watching it. And it'll pull up the artist and what album it's off of. That's another fun way you could do that too. If you're more of a phone person, if you have your phone on while you're watching the show. Yeah, that's cool feedback. I like that. I like getting named music, and that's a Opus 69. Did they choose that on purpose because it's a naughty number? Because there are a lot of sex in this show. I'll tell you that.
I don't think so, Steve, but you never know. You never know.
Let's see. My feedback, I have 2 bits. One of them is from our number 1 sweetie. Well, our number 2 sweetie. Like James has claimed himself. He's the number 1 sweet child. But our number 2 is Heather, and she had, given me a little bit of grief for my pronunciation. So I'm trying to do better. Last episode, you heard my attempt at good pronunciation. That continues on. I am going to try to take a serious attempt at doing this right. James suggested just doing like nicknames for everybody, like we've done for 1899. We did that, but it doesn't seem right. I mean, we need to differentiate these characters and name them by their proper names. So, we're going to continue doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's your choice, Steve, because I was a little concerned when I saw there were some names and, I suppose, listeners, if you want to know what those names are, hit us up with some feedback and we'll certainly tell you. But I was like, is that what we agreed? Because you said Lindsey and I agreed. I was like, did we agree we were going to use those names? I don't know, but
no, I agree. We're going to use like their proper names.
Okay, yes.
You must have misread that. I agree. I've said that we want to use their real names. Every time I talk about Jose Arcadio Buendia, the elder, I always say his full name. And James is like, just call him Jab or just call him Jose. These are his suggestions. Those aren't bad suggestions. So that was some of his feedback, but he gave me some very, very serious feedback too, because that's fun feedback, pronounce everything right, names. Some very serious feedback that James gave me. Again, this is in-house stuff. He is our number 1 sweetie. And this is the last time I'll be saying this personally. This is my personal choice, instigated by James. I won't be saying the word gypsy any longer because he reminded me that, we've been kind of a little loose and fun with that word. And they say it on the show a lot to describe like entire groups of people. And typically you look at somebody with a scarf and like loose clothing and they tell fortunes and that's how you describe them. But he reminded me that the word has a really bad connotation and we shouldn't be like saying it freely. So for myself, I'm going to try not to say it.
What was his suggestion of what you should say?
Not that. I mean, it's as simple as that, there's really just no reason to refer to like the free folk, the circus people. I guess Like if I were to describe, Jose Arcadio, for example, in this episode, he himself said that he was a group of renegade compatriots or expatriates. So that's what I would call him, I guess, a pirate, a sailor. I'm not going to, it's easy not to choose not to use a word, especially if it's a word you don't say every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fine. I guess like for me, it's used on the show, but I remember watching a particular movie, and gypsy can have a bad connotation, so they called them the Romani people.
Oh,
is a name, but I think that could be a particular culture and to represent a particular culture rather than be able to describe all of free folk or whatever you want to say. So I'm not sure if it's correct to use it for anyone, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was totally fine to use the word when it was used back and when this book was written too. And they chose to be very book specific on the show, warts and all. That's why we're watching young Remedios' last episode. And, she's not with us any longer. But I don't think that's a choice that an author would make in, our decade right now, to have him choose to marry a 9-year-old.
That's
you know what I
very
mean?
true.
Like these are just very period specific things that, like if we were, here's a good example. If we decided on Sweet Child of Time, we're going to do a chapter by chapter dissection of Tom Sawyer. There's certain words I wouldn't say while we were reading that book, but we would be seeing this word page after page after page.
That's true.
Well,
so yeah, I think we can. Yeah, we can move on. I don't have anything. I don't have anything to say about it.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so what other feedback did I have? Oh yeah. I was asked, and this is the last question I'm going to ask you before we go into this, because I'm kind of excited to go into this episode. It starts off with a real bang, a return of a character, which I think is fun. And that's what I'm going to ask you. Lindsey, if I were to tell you, that I think this show is fun, and I were to ask you to give me an example of something that you think is fun, like within this show, or like lighthearted, could you have any examples of that?
Of things in this show that are fun?
Like for me, I kind of like the way the characters like commit to their roles, and you can see like in their eyes that they're committing to their roles, and I'd really appreciate that. I don't know, it just adds a level of fun to it, the way that their dialect is. I was trying to describe to James what I like, what I think is fun about it, and I'm having a hard time doing so.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of this show as fun.
Right.
Fun is when you laugh a lot, or you think, well, isn't that silly, those guys? I mean, there's particular moments that are kind of fun.
I laughed out loud twice this episode. That's true.
Yes. And I think sometimes, I guess, like, there's things that are funny, like it's kind of funny that the guy had a whole rule about you have to paint your house blue, for instance.
Right.
But then in the context, like later on in the show, it becomes not funny, because it becomes a lot more serious.
Sure. I'll point out my funny parts when we get to the recap here. No sense in prolonging it anymore, Lindsey. Do you want to lead us through our recap, if you will?
Okay. Yes, we can. We're going to hold off then on the characters.
Oh, no. We're not holding off on nothing. What is this, Lindsey? What characters, huh?
Well, I know you love a good quiz, Steve,
yeah.
or a thought exercise, I guess.
And our audience does too, yes.
Yeah, our audience does too. Maybe they do. I don't know if anybody likes it as much as you, though, Steve.
I don't know.
So this is we once did a color compatibility quiz.
Yes.
And it was like, which of these characters, if you say a color, which character reminds you of this, color? So I thought we would do a similar one, which is a dark character compatibility quiz.
Okay.
So the quiz is, which character from Dark best matches this 100 Years of Solitude character? So kind of the same rules apply.
All right.
I'm going to name you a character from 100 Years of Solitude, and you will name a character from Dark that you think is the most similar to this character.
Okay.
Now, you are sort of a disadvantage because I had a little bit longer to think about this.
Exactly. I have no pre-planned notions. I'm terrible at these kind of things, but I think I'm familiar with both of these shows. I think I'll do okay.
Yes. So what I will offer to you is, we'll let you answer, and then I'll share what my answers were, and we can say like why we picked one character or another.
Okay.
But then, of course, you're going to have a chance to think about it a little more, and you might decide you agree with me, but
Probably will.
this is more like to see like how we think about these things the same and differently, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you can only name each character once, of course. So, the first character I think might be the easiest.
Okay.
And that is going to be Melquiades.
Melquiades. I guess in Dark, it would have to be the Stranger because he comes out of, maybe the Stranger. That's my first inkling of a guess is the Stranger. Yeah, he kind of guides Jonas, makes things happen in a certain way, locks him up. Yeah. I'm going to say the Stranger. How about yourself, Lindsay? How did I do?
Well, we'll go through this, and we can talk about that at the end, I think.
Okay, the Stranger's gone though. I can't say him for anybody else.
Stranger's gone. You can't say him again. You might want to jot him down somewhere.
Ooh.
Okay, so the next character is Jose Arcadio Buendia. And don't forget, Steve, there's no right or wrong answers. So don't stress out too much about this.
Well, I'm just trying to think of who is like him that like stands in the.
Yeah, think about his whole where
arc.
You can get stuck is be like think about him at a particular time period, but just
he's Jonas. He's like the lead guy, and like yes, he's tied to the tree now, but in a way, Jonas is tied to his own tree as well. So like my first two answers: Stranger, the Jonas. I mean, the Stranger, Jonas.
This is funny because you just took like the two biggest characters off the map. So good travels to you, my good sir.
Okay.
All right. So the next person is Ursula.
Okay. Yeah. She's the mother and she's conservative, keep things cool. So she can't be Hannah. She's got to be Katerina. Katerina is Ursula. She's a principal of the school. She's conservative. That sounds good to me.
Okay, the next character is Jose Arcadio Jr. Jose Arcadio 2.
Okay, the guy that we meet in this episode. Like which I'm trying to think which version of him.
The son that left and then came back.
I mean,
after eating his food.
Oh yeah, and he's the guy that's well hung and all that. He's Magnus, absolutely. He's gorgeous. He's Magnus, 100%.
All right, the next character is Aureliano.
See, I want to say the Stranger for him because I really, really dig this Aureliano guy. He follows in kind of a similar path as Jonas. I would say Claudia. She's like one of my favorites in Dark. Very important character. Gets the ball moving forward in a positive way. Like I think somebody's doing this episode. Yeah, Claudia.
Okay, so you're saying Claudia for Aureliano.
Yes.
Okay. The next character is Amaranta.
Well, her name is very similar to Martha, but she doesn't do a whole lot. She's in the background here, threatening to kill people and stuff. She doesn't seem like she's a threat, but she certainly is. So I think she's Francisca.
Rebeca.
Wild child. Okay. Who's the wildest person in Dark? Let's think about this for a second. Who could I see out there eating dirt? I guess, in lack of anybody else, let's give it to Mikkel. See Mikkel out there shoveling some dirt in his mouth. He's a stranger in a strange land, just like her. So, I'm going with Mikkel.
Okay. Pilar.
Smoking Pilar. Okay, Hannah. Absolutely, she is a Hannah. She's getting around with everybody. She's got different kids from different people. She's smoking. Yes.
Hannah didn't get around with everybody. Oh, boy.
Oh, wait. Ulrich and, that right there.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, it's a solid choice.
Okay, this makes me think of a character I forgot. Okay, but we have one more. We just have one more character left. I didn't go too far with this. Arcadio.
Arcadio, okay. Yeah, he's Eric. He's Eric. He gets kidnapped in the first episode. He doesn't belong.
Oh my gosh. hilarious.
So that's who he
Okay.
is, unfortunately.
All right. Well, let me tell you what I said. I don't think we only really matched on one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for Melquiades, I put H.G. Tannhaus.
Oh, I forgot he exists. I would have said that too.
Because he's like the clockmaker.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Good call.
the one really behind everything.
Yeah, you're right.
For Jose Arcadio Buendia, I put Ulrich for him. Because he starts out kind of on top of the world and confident and ends up crazy and sad and tied to a tree in like a straitjacket, basically.
Wow, that's great. Okay, I agree.
For Ursula, I put Katerina. That was one that we matched on.
Solid.
Strong and no fear, stands up to her husband, leaves home to find her missing son.
I didn't even think of that.
Jose Arcadio Jr., I accidentally actually skipped him, but I like your pick of Magnus. That was a good one for that. Aureliano, for him I put Jonas. A dreamer and lover, happy with the woman of his dreams. Once he loses her, he becomes disillusioned and joins a revolution.
Huh.
Oh, he doesn't just join, he leads a revolution, you know?
Yeah. Good call.
Amaranta, I put Hannah for her. Because she's jaded and envious of her sister/friend. And
I can see it.
She's really bitter and she's ready to kill her sister, based on...
Wasn't Francisca a solid choice for that too, though? Because she gets pretty badass at some points as well. You don't think so? Anyway,
yeah. For Rebecca, I put Elizabeth. And it was interesting that you said a wild girl. Elizabeth isn't all horny like Rebecca is, but...
Oh,
she's sort of
good choice.
Once she gets into that situation, she becomes basically a very wild girl, and she's the fox. And
I like your choice better than Mikkel.
I think she does some crazy stuff later too. Then for Pilar, I put Claudia for her. Actually,
okay.
I put the ultimate mother, sacrifices all for the sake of her sons. Makes things happen, watches everything. Pilar knows what's going on all the time.
She's watching this episode, right?
Yeah. And then for Arcadio, I put Bartosz. Because he's kind of, disgruntled and he's sort of forgotten and left behind. Nobody really thinks much about him.
Not really fitting in with the rest of the gang 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you were talking about, oh, she's sleeping around with everybody. That's what you said about Pilar. I was like, I guess, we forgot about Agnes in here somewhere because she uses sex as part of a revolution as well.
That's right.
She's part of the cause. I mean, yeah.
The inner sanctum.
That's the quiz. That's the character compatibility quiz, Steve.
Yeah, good deal. I like that a lot. And it was tough. It made me think a lot. And not being able to trade characters. I kind of... But yeah, let's talk about our characters this episode. I'm loving this episode 6. And yeah, lead us to how this thing starts out.
All right. So as we said, the title is Colonel Aureliano Buendia. And our episode opens with another vision, or it could be a memory. Starts with underwater and then ends on a raft. Jose Arcadio, too, is on the raft. And he is reuniting with his family. He tells his father the world has always been more beautiful in his eyes.
Yeah, it's like he's kind of... I wrote, that was one of my notes, too, that he was a little disappointed in the world. He's been around the world 60-some times, and he's a little... he thought the world was cooler than it actually is basically what I gathered from that. Yeah, I don't think this was a vision. I think this is his arrival at Macondo.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of it because it did start with underwater, and it was. I wondered if he was remembering swimming with his brother, because I think that was one of the scenes of them. They would swim together, and it was very peaceful. So
right. Okay.
But it could have also been if he was drowning, and then comes up on the raft. Now at breakfast, Jose Arcadio eats. He's eating a breakfast worthy of Rocky with some raw eggs. And he has been around the world 65 times, we find out.
Yep.
Amaranta looks pretty disgusted with his eating habits, but Rebecca is thrilled, especially when she finds out he resorted to cannibalism. She eats dirt, he eats people. What could be more perfect?
Did you notice that the little kid was doing sign language at the table? Little
No.
Aureliano Jose. Like when he's at the head, he being Jose Arcadio. Well, first let me start with that. I don't know why I went into the thing about the kid with sign language. So I looked over at my notes as you were talking, and that's the first thing that I saw, little kid. Because I thought that was remarkable. Like they had this 1.5-year-old kid, and he was looking up at Amaranta, and like he was like clearly signing like 3 different things with like looking her straight in the eye. And I was like, I don't think that was like the director asked him to do that. I think this kid speaks sign language and he was asking her for something. But yeah, this dude's rough, comes in with a dozen eggs. Very striking individual. Did you catch what was up with his necklace? Why they were fixated on that for a few seconds?
No, I didn't. I was trying to look at later he takes his shirt off. Was trying to study his tattoos several times. I wasn't able to come up with much about that. But what did you notice about the necklace?
I don't know. I couldn't even tell what the necklace was. And it made me want to go back and watch like the last episode we saw with him as a young guy because, he bends over to say something to his dad and that's what his dad fixates on. Might be just because his dad is, half senile or whatever. But, I didn't know if it meant something. He had, first I'll say about the guy, like, this was my thoughts. Like you might have your preference of like a blonde or brunette, or maybe you prefer like Asians or black or whatever. But some people are just undeniably hot, despite of like what your preferences are. You know what I mean? Like you just look at this person and their confidence and their eyes, and you're like, and that's this guy. He like takes over the whole room, like with his like charisma. He doesn't have charisma. I take that back. With his really good looks and his confidence. But he seems really uncaring. Like Ursula is like tearing up and he's just kind of, asking the next question. And it's kind of a little odd, I thought. Did you think that was weird?
Yeah, I noticed that too. He's introduced to Rebecca and Pietro, and Ursula is sitting there weeping at the table, sad about the time she missed with him. And Jose Arcadio just doesn't seem impressed by this or moved by it at all. And he's a man of few words. He's all testosterone and masks most of any emotion and sort of the enemy of sentimentality. He's quite the opposite of his brother, Aureliano, who's like a deep thinker and very careful with his words, communicative. He's just kind of more an action-oriented individual. It was interesting you said Magnus because in a way Magnus could be sort of touchy-feely. He was like telling Francisca he wanted to get to know her. But it did strike me that I was thinking about when he and his brother were boys. Remember when they used to run around and be wild children, hunting boar?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And, Ursula kind of takes Jose Arcadio Buendia to task because she feels like he's missing his opportunity to be a good father. And she's like, your kids are running around like animals. But not much has changed now. So it's kind of like, is this his father's fault? Should he have tried to make his son a more well-rounded individual? And I'm also thinking about Pilar saying that he's like a hurricane. He's just all force of nature. And that just seems to be this guy's wiring. As far as him and his mother, I think it's interesting because we talk about Ursula and how she's sort of a climber. She's a strong woman. She's not the most tender necessarily. And she's certainly sort of alienating all of her kids in one way or another, except for, maybe Aureliano. He was sort of against, they didn't want him to marry this person and he did anyway. Actually, he's more upset his father that way. I don't know. But Arcadio's not fond of her.
Of course.
No, and Rebecca's not. So maybe he's just been gone too long, and it's not that he doesn't care, but he's just kind of like, you're just over here crying. I can't, that's not me. I'm doing this other thing. And this continues. It's not just with her, it's with his brother. It's hard for him to kind of find that well of emotion where he sort of wants to take care of other people. He really doesn't.
He has been around the world 65 times, like you said, too. So he's seen an awful lot.
Yeah.
So this is like nothing to him. Like his mom is crying. He looks over. Hey, who's this guy over here? Huh? What's up, Pietro? Yeah, he's seen a lot. He's participated in cannibalism. Did you catch that?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, you did say that.
That Rebecca eats dirt, he eats people. So, I mean.
Okay, that flew past me. I'm very sorry. Yeah, there you go. You buried the lead. I missed the lead.
He does give the one person he seems to kind of care about seeing is Aureliano. He does give him a nice brotherly hug, even though Aureliano is much taller than him. He calls him hermanito, little brother, but then he notices, wow, you're now taller than me, but he still gives him a hug. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that Aureliano he's not really the kind of guy that makes enemies because he's such he's a nice person.
He's a thoughtful, sensitive person. And the first thing his brother wants to do is get out of this kitchen situation and go party, right?
Yeah, they're in the brother's old bedroom. Jose Arcadio sets up his hammock. Okay. And Aureliano explains that he moved upstairs to the second floor when he got married. And, oh, by the way, your son used to sleep in this room, too. And Jose Arcadio Jr., again, has nothing to say. He's like, Arcadio, who's that? And he's like, oh, it's your son.
No big deal.
Oh, yeah. And Aureliano also takes this opportunity to talk about their late night talks when they were boys and the night his brother told him what sex feels like. And Aurelio wants to know if he remembers too. Jose Arcadio says that it doesn't matter if I remember as long as you remember. And this is where I put what is going on here, because I was thinking, what is this guy afraid of too? What is he suppressing? So I don't know. That night he left. He probably, I don't know if he feels some level of shame about the way that he left things. But anyway, but he did come home. But then you kind of wonder, well, if he's so disengaged from them, why did he come home?
I mean, I think he came home to get money, to get a place to stay. He had nowhere else to go, right? He's like the deadhead that's been traveling with the dead for 20 years and run out of money. And I guess I'll come home now, because he goes and orders a bunch of drinks from the bar. Who could possibly pay for drinks for everyone at the bar, buying 50 drinks? He's using Aureliano's money.
You think so?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I wonder if then it seems like he was sort of wandering the world
on a raft.
But what was usually when you come home, it's because something went wrong. So, but I don't know if we find out what went wrong.
Sure.
But, with my sister, my younger sister now, she left to go to Epcot and was, worked at Walt Disney World for a while. And she had no interest in coming home. She came home when she ran out of money.
Right.
So something went wrong. But we don't get any necessarily insight about what went wrong with Jose Arcadio Jr., except for, we see this vision of him on the raft. So I don't know if that's filled in later or if it's no backstory is necessary. He's just home now.
Yeah. I won't spoil anything in that respect then. But I will say, I mean, it's striking that he doesn't care about the fact that he has a kid, and he doesn't really seem to have any fond memories along with Aureliano. So it's almost sus to me. But, somebody in the family seems to like him an awful lot. But, we'll get there when we get there.
Mm-hmm. So they go to Caterino's, the let's go clubbing.
Yeah.
He's a party man, and all wild children, decides to auction himself off to the highest bidder. Teresa wins that bid.
Yeah.
Pilar comes in and has a moment of reflection at seeing her old lover, but she makes no attempt to approach him.
They can have a family reunion right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because Arcadio is enjoying the liveliness. He's not over there going jealous, how is this guy getting game? But he's just
he's admiring
all right,
him.
Party, free drinks, everybody.
Yeah. He seems to like him. That's right.
Yeah. Apolinar Moscote now enters, but not to give a noise ordinance. That's what I thought he was going to come in. It's too loud in here, but no, He's here to remind the men that there will soon be an election, and there's now going to be a curfew in place, and the sale of alcohol is prohibited. Plus, gatherings of more than 3 people who are not related are now prohibited. And I have to say, Steve, that now we're going too far with the rules. And he hasn't won the election yet. So how can he come in here and start handing out all these ordinances?
Because he now has like the military on his side. Like you notice that he's got the military guys in town, and they're kind of nudging him along the way here. You know, I didn't say at the top here, but this turns into a very political episode. And we're starting to see like the first hints of that. It's like they're having an election, but they're preparing for the election with all these strange rules. And it's like we learn things about this election here, but this is the first hint that, you know, he has sights on this town here, telling everybody what to do. And Jose Arcadio Buendia's tied to a tree. He can't stop anybody. So now, you know, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, if he only wasn't tied to that chestnut tree.
Yeah.
Sweet Shot of Time is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the way we record Sweet Shot of Time. We hook up with our guests via video and we record it on audio. Recently, we've been doing video podcasts with the cast of Time Bandits. It's easy using Zencastr. You can record video or audio. You can also edit your podcast or your video via Zencastr. Join Zencastr using my promo code Sweet Child of Time and you can get 30% off Zencastr. If you're ready to start your podcast, it's time to share your story. Share it with Zencastr. That promo code once again, Sweet Child of Time at Zencastr.com.
So Arcadio goes to see the homeopathic doctor that foresaw this whole mess coming. Mm-hmm. And the doctor's name is Illyrio Nuera. We find out his diploma is fake.
Yes, I love that.
He's actually, they call him a terrorist. And he has this map of the world with circles on it. And when Arcadio comes in, they kind of call him the mayor's little pawn just because he took his job from the mayor. But Arcadio protests that he's not the mayor's pawn, that he's a free agent.
That's right. Yeah, at this point, does he give out those little bottles to people to like solidify like their allegiance? He gives out these little bottles to his followers, right?
Yes, they call them globules. And they're the symbol of an uprising. So, this was another thing that I was trying to understand because what's interesting is I actually put in, as a Google search, Steve, I put 100 Years of Solitude globules because I thought maybe somebody would tell us what's in the globules or what's going on. But the only information I could find using that word globules was actually about some materials that were in the alchemy kit that Melquiades gave Jose Arcadio Buendia, that it was somehow this like dust, almost like the dust in Dark where they go through time travel and it's like stars. So I was like, I don't think those are the globules we're talking about. But I was kind of wondering what was in these globules.
Probably the sugar pills. They talk a lot about this doctor and how he's made his living here in Moscote as like being a fake doctor and selling sugar pills to people. And, you know, people think they get better because they take his sugar pills. So maybe the globules are tied in with that somehow. I do know my research that I did for like the Civil War of Colombia, like around 1899, is when the conservatives and the liberals would make their way into small towns like Moscote that were like kind of separated from everybody else and join the town and lead the townspeople one direction or another. And in this instance, it seems like the conservatives are a little more aggressive and the liberals are portrayed here as kind of sneaky. You know, like he comes into town under the guise of darkness and he's leading the townspeople. And, you know, it seems like some of his words like really resonate with them, but he's not one of them. He didn't come from Moscote. He came from outside, and his agenda is to have this town be part of his rebel uprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Aureliano visits Apolinar for a friendly game of dominoes. And while they're playing this game, they talk about, you know, Apolinar remarks on some of the negative things that he has to say about the liberals and things they might believe. And he talks about that they think illegitimate children should have equal rights. Another factor that, you know, just it kind of reminded me how of today people make comments about illegal immigrants or whatever, well, these people are,
That's right.
these people shouldn't have equal rights. And then you say, well, I have a really good friend. And then they're kind of like, well, of course, like not that person, so.
Yeah, that's what's happening here. Right.
And of course, Aureliano has a son that's illegitimate. So this really kind of raises his hackles. But Apollinaire insists that's not the same because that baby has his father's name. So that won't count for our family.
Mm-hmm.
Aureliano, though, isn't really a man of politics. He wants to stay neutral.
He has a hard time seeing the difference between the liberals and conservatives. So he's like a moderate. So he like walks the line here. So I think that Moscote kind of takes advantage of that in a way, or maybe it's just happened organically that they have, bonded over, their family ties here. And now they play these games of dominoes. They agree to these rules of dominoes and they play the game together. So that says something right there. But yeah, it's clear that Aureliano doesn't really have a distinction between the two at this point. I think, I'm not a dominoes guy, but it looks like he wins this game at the end. Is that the gist that you got?
Aureliano wins.
Okay, a little foreshadowing. Okay, yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah, he's pretty good at this game. And yeah, I mean, Aureliano reminded me of me. These are the kinds of things I say, that not about the dominoes, but I mean, about this desire to stay neutral.
Yeah.
You feel like you don't want to be a shill for either side. I'm going to stay in the middle. Like I can see the legitimate things in your point and I can see legitimate things in your point. And you try to toe the line and usually you can get along with everybody because you're more into listening than trying to influence somebody that your point is correct. And that's where Aureliano is. He's not out to win any elections or convince anybody. He's more of the soft side of life. He wants to read his books and have his thoughts, and he wants to play his dominoes and maybe have some good whiskey. And so I appreciate that, but we'll see if he can continue to to stay that way throughout. Sometimes, it's like what happens a lot of times is you start to notice things around you that are not so good. And so it becomes harder and harder to maintain that neutral position.
Yeah, like I was saying before, these two guys come into town, the doctor and the magistrate, and it's like they want everybody to choose sides. Mm-hmm. And seems like everybody does. Aureliano, no. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a striking characteristic.
Yeah. So the doctor, we find out, is really having an influence over the youth. And he talks to them about that, hey, your parents founded Moscote on the principles of liberalism. They were into things being free and equal in this conservative way with all these rules. That's not all in keeping with what your parents believed. So he's trying to use their own past and their own legacy to his advantage. And then they receive a shipment by wagon, and it's a printing press, which is, of course, the symbol of any revolution is writing that can instigate. And they make some liberal flyers.
Yeah. Heck yeah. This is Project Mayhem stuff right here from Fight Club. And so they even say that. They're like, everybody's a part of this. Nobody knew what their own part of the plan was, but they all were united in the idea behind it. And I immediately thought of Project Mayhem. And they want free love. What's this all about?
Another thing I heard just briefly, this wasn't made a big plot point, but there was one of the conversation things is they talk about, yes, but we reject utilitarianism. And so I was like, what is utilitarianism? Because I've heard that word before, but that argues that the right choice is the one that benefits the most people. And the reason sometimes people go against this principle is that it ignores inequalities that exist in society. So, it kind of, the liberalism that the doctor is embracing is one that recognizes that, okay, all people aren't equal. So just going by the one that benefits the most people, well, who are we talking about most people? Is it which people should it be benefiting is more important to them than the quantities of the people. And Arcadio gets excited about the idea of this printing press, and that there's a free and sovereign Macondo is what the flyer says. Yep. And they bring up the idea of maybe executing the priest.
Yeah. What?
Just for laughs and giggles.
Relax, guys. Come on. Jesus Christ. The free love sounds fun. Killing the priests, I don't know about that one. Are we around the time where he was in the schoolhouse, he being the doctor, and he was, giving them a hearty speech?
Have you seen? I don't know. Go ahead and talk about it if you want. I can't see when that comes up.
I do, because I noticed that there was a red bandana tied to his arm when he was up there doing his thing. And so, that's the symbol of the Liberal Party. And you remember episode 1 or 2, we see the red bandana tied around somebody's arm in Aureliano's vision when he sees people in the river. So just wanted to point that out.
Okay. There's a brief scene in the middle here in the middle of our revolution. We also have Rebeca, who is sleepless, and she's ready to throw in the towel with Pietro. Pietro, what is Pietro compared to this magnificent beast?
Unfair comparison. Come on.
And by the end of this scene, though, we find out that they're taking everybody's knives, and nobody can eat steak anymore. This is very sad, but not for you, Steve. You're a vegetarian.
Yeah.
But Ursula's kind of beside herself trying to figure out why would they take everybody's knives, but she finds the flyers and, kind of thinks that maybe if this protest wasn't happening, that the conservatives wouldn't be this scared. She doesn't say that, but that's just what I took out of it, that she's like, what is this flyer? And this is what's the problem? If we didn't have these flyers, maybe we would still have our knives.
I took it a different way. I thought this is an awfully sexist situation here, because it was very intrusive for the soldiers and the government to come into their homes and take their knives away. Even vegetarians oppose this because, I have to use knives to cut all my vegetables too, don't forget. I mean, come on. So, bad news, but it shows all the women come outside out of their kitchens, and seems like they notice politics for the first time in their lives. And it's like they're finally involved. The women are finally involved in politics. That's how I took it, is like they finally stepped out of the kitchen. And I thought it was sexist, but at the same time, just a step forward, showing you it's not just the guys in town that are getting riled up. Now the women are getting riled up too, and they're not liking what the conservatives are doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true. But I guess I took it as she definitely didn't like them taking her knives. That's clear.
Right. Nobody likes it.
That was because she was following them outside and really giving it to those soldiers.
Yeah.
But she also notices the flyers, and maybe you're right. But I guess I thought she picked up this red flyer that was different and was like, oh no, because we kind of know that she's sided at this so far in this show. She's been siding with the Moscotes and
kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like she doesn't really believe what they believe, but she's in the purpose of fitting in. She's kind of letting things happen. Okay, my daughter does need to get married in a church and all this stuff, even though it's not what she really
I bet
believed.
She voted blue. She absolutely voted blue. I know she did.
Yeah. Okay. So
before we move on, though, I wanted to say, we said that Rebeca was digging her brother now. Well, they say it's his brother. We'll get to that in a minute. Jose Arcadio is not really her brother. Mm-hmm. But Pietro Crespi's sitting there oh, what about me? Just wanted to give him a moment, because I really like Pietro. And because I'm a musician too, and I'm kind of a low-key kind of person. And Aureliano is really my guy, but maybe Pietro's high up on my list too. I like to hang out with the guy. And he reminds me of Pete Davidson. Can you see that in his face a little bit? And his mannerisms, he's like a Pete Davidson, non-threatening kind of guy.
Oh, I don't know. I thought Pietro was cool, but he was being kind of lame.
Maybe. Yeah. They haven't like declared their love yet, have they? Because I have something to say about that, but we haven't gotten there yet, have we?
Right. We haven't gotten
Okay.
there.
I always do
So
that.
it's
Okay.
election day at last. It's going to be free and open to all, and let the people decide what they want. Sure. So the people come and people, I should say. I only saw men voting, so I think it was only men that were voting in this election. And we find out that the liberals are all showing their loyalty by taking a drink from their bottles. Now, I don't know what the purpose of that was, except for just solidarity, or if they were able to like kind of keep track, because if they saw that, then they'd sort of know.
That's it. It's an exit poll. We have exit polls here in America for our elections. That's their way of an election poll. This is what the doctor instructed them to do. So he could count the votes because they all knew that they were going to cheat, that the conservatives were going to cheat at the elections, because the doctor had been to other towns and this has happened before. So he knew that they were going to cheat. So that's why he wanted some allegiance. And I wanted to point out that some men drank from their bottle to show their allegiance, but they were voting blue. I saw 2 men vote blue, but then drank from their bottle afterwards. So, even though the conservatives didn't actually win, a significant amount of people did, vote conservative. It wasn't exactly 50-50. It was like 65-35, I think is what the final vote was. But yeah, a good amount of people, voted conservative anyway.
Interesting. I didn't necessarily correlate oh, this person that just dropped a blue bottle is now the same one that's walking away and taking a drink. Like, I was just taking it as a montage that said that might have been like they showed that there were red ballots going in and blue, and they showed people drinking bottles, but I wasn't necessarily. But yeah, not a big deal. So at the ballot box is Apolinar and Aureliano. Maybe it's just to show like, hey, we have a conservative and we have a neutral guy there.
Yep, that's exactly it. Adding some credence.
If they really wanted to be fair, one of the ballot counters need to be a liberal. That's how they do it in our election, Steve.
They do, but this is the closest they can get to a liberal is Aureliano.
Okay, Mr. Moscote gives Aureliano a blue ballot. Now, I wasn't sure if that was his ballot or if he was giving Aureliano, like, here, you vote now, and here's your ballot.
That's what I took it as, is that he was, like, making sure that Aureliano voted conservative. Yes.
So after the votes are all cast, they close the blinds and count what's in the box. The red ballots win, no problem. But Moscote says, hey, we'll just switch them around. We'll just say, like, the amount of red ballots you counted will be blue and vice versa. So that we'll just make it seem like our side won, even though they didn't.
This happens in a smoky room, we got to say. A smoky room with the windows closed.
Aureliano makes no complaints, but he does mention, hey, if I was a liberal, it would be a reason for me to go to war. And Moscote says that, well, if you were a liberal, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here to see this.
Yeah, they don't really paint the conservatives in a good light whatsoever. They don't give them a lot of like good grace here. It's like they cheat and they lie and they'll do it to your face. And it's like, not a good look.
Yeah. I didn't like Aureliano much in this part of the episode. I was just like, you're just going to. I mean, it's supposed to show his evolution. But yeah, he's just kind of like, oh, you're cheating? All right.
This is like his allegiance to his family here. Like he considers Moscote his family. So he's like, at this point, turning a blind eye against his better will out of love, basically. Because he still loves Moscote and he says he'll protect him to the end. He says he'll protect him, if the liberal. Well, later on, he says something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, I didn't dislike it here. I just thought it just displayed his compassion. Not compassion.
Loyalty or...
Loyalty. Yeah, that's more of a better word for it.
Loyalty to his dead wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rebeca is eating dirt. And Jose Arcadio Jr. sees this and thinks, interesting. Okay, so she enters his bedroom and seals the deal. And she finally gets to lose her virginity.
And yeah, this is So we got the conservatives, we got the liberal, we got this guy in the middle, and then we have these two folks. These are like the outsiders. They represent like indigenous, tribal, eating dirt, like, having free sex loudly. It's a completely different path that we're seeing here. And I believe he's following the Jose Arcadio Buendia path.
So the next morning at breakfast, they announce they will get married. Ursula is horrified, and she mentions these words that are said multiple times. She is your sister. And, this is confusing to me, why they are continuing this charade. She's not really his sister. She's a distant cousin, and nobody even remembers who these cousins are. That's how distant that they are. So I think that what I got out of it, and I'd like to hear what you think, is that her marriage to Pietro, her supposed marriage to Pietro, was not ideal for her mom because she might move away, but she was marrying within white proper society. And instead, her marriage to Jose Arcadio is scandalous because even though she's not really his sister, that's what they have portrayed her as within their family. Maybe nobody really knows outside of those walls where Rebeca came from. Although, would that be true? I don't know. It's like the people in town all knew, but, he's this free man and wild, doing scandalous things. And this will not be understood at all by the town and Ursula's proper friends. So, but yeah, I was curious how you saw this, why they kept saying, she's your sister. She's your sister. You can't, this is horrible.
I mean, that's a really good guess, I think. I think that has merit. It also goes hand in hand with what I think. Rebeca, by the way, came into town and she initially spoke Wayu, just like Visitacion. So that's where she comes from. So, that's why I say I kind of like what you're saying. I think it's more along the lines of they're actually just cousins, distant cousins at that. And I think this is the Ouroboros coming around. This is Ursula following in the footsteps of her mother, saying, you two can't get married because you're related, just like her mother said to her in Jose Arcadio Buendia.
Because they were cousins too.
Yeah, because they were cousins too. I just took that at face value. So the further truth about, the tribalness of Rebeca and Jose Arcadio, where he comes from, that makes total sense too. I think it's both tied in. I think we're both right.
So Amaranta is really giving the tablecloth a good clawing. I mean, she's got it like rubbed tightly in her hands.
Yeah.
And so she's upset about this, although we can talk about that in a minute. Okay, so Amaranta then, because they've left, they've announced they're getting married, and Ursula's like, you won't come into this house again, and they're just like, perfect, fine.
Yeah. This is when I laughed because he walks out of the house, puts her over his shoulder and slaps her ass in front of everybody. That was hilarious. I mean, I laughed every time.
Yeah. Well, she also said, you're all invited. You're cordially invited. She said that. That
she
part
invites
was funny.
Everybody. Almost everybody shows up. Almost everybody.
And so then Amaranta rips up Rebeca's original wedding dress and takes all of her sister's things outside to burn them.
Symbolic gestures. That's all it is. I mean, sure, have your fun because Rebeca's out of here now. You don't have to worry about her at all anymore. She won't get in the way of you and Pietro Crespi.
Yeah, but this was quite a scene. It's like,
oh yeah,
I don't know if it was completely clear to me too. Like, you might think, oh, she's not going to marry Pietro anymore. Great, maybe I can have him. But she's just continuing to be shocked and horrified at everything her sister does, and she wants nothing to do with her. So it was quite a gesture, though, to burn all of somebody's things.
Yeah, to burn that white wedding dress. I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way. She's like taking that away from her. Like, you can't have this white wedding dress because y'all are nasty.
I guess maybe still like Amaranta is continuing to like there's some level of jealousy she has for her sister
Yeah.
That she can do all these wild things and is allowed, not that she's allowed, but she does them, whereas she's sort of repressed and stuck in this house, still like kind of an old maid at this point.
But she's not even, she's still pretty young. But yeah, I get what you're saying. We haven't gotten to the wedding itself yet, but he has to go break the news to Pietro.
Right. He goes to confront, Jose Arcadio Jr. goes to confront Pietro in person, and he tells him he's marrying Rebeca. And again, Pietro's like, that you're your sister, Pietro looks really upset about this. And I was like, dude, you were taking your sweet time about this marriage. You didn't seem to be that
That's
you
true.
didn't seem to be that anxious to get married, but as soon as he gets dumped, then he's like a sad sack.
It kind of happened overnight, so I can't really blame him. This is where the book was different than the show. Same situation. Jose Arcadio busts in on his music lesson, breaks the news in front of the class. Pietro breaks down crying. Instead of Jose Arcadio just like kind of coldly walking out, as soon as Pietro starts crying, Jose Arcadio kind of softens and gives him a hug and, tells him, I'm sorry, friend, this is how things go. But, there is Amaranta, she's always loved you. So, go for that, dude.
Oh, he's a little bit more wise sage in the book, apparently.
I wouldn't say a wise sage, but like when Pietro started crying, that affected him and he like changed his tune a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So then Aureliano confronts the magistrate and says, hey, my mom wants her knives back.
And Mommy sent me.
And Apolinar says that, the knives are being used to prove that the liberals are planning to go to war. So
again,
unfortunately,
lies.
I can't give you those knives back. But they're being put to good use, buddy. So yeah, this happens, and then we see the liberals in the woods, and they find out that the conservatives stole the election and that there's fraud going around all over the nation, that they find out other people are going to war, and they want to do the same thing, but they don't have any weapons. All their knives have been taken.
I mean, I think they'll figure something out. These are resourceful Macondo people. They can do something here.
Mm-hmm. So at the wedding now of Jose Arcadio II and Rebeca.
Another LOL moment. Like, as soon as it cuts to the wedding, they're making out as the priest is giving them their words.
But at least the priest says, hey, they're not really siblings.
Right. Yeah, he sees reason.
Finally,
don't kill this priest. This priest is nice.
It's a small little ceremony, and here's some of the guests I noticed were there. Teresa, the woman that won Arcadio in the highest bid. She's not sour grapes at all about this. She kind of gives him a big hug. She's like,
free
congratulations. And, the only family members that show up are Arcadio and Aureliano.
Kind of. There's also standing off in the distance is Pilar. Pilar, there's one scene where when they come outside and it's in slow motion and they're throwing rice and having a great time, Pilar is overlooking all this. So,
yeah, Pilar's there, but she's not a family member of either one of them. She's an ex-lover.
Well, so is Teresa, and she's there. Come on.
Yes, I said only 2 family members are there. That's all I said.
Oh, well, let's not discount Arcadio's wife. She was there. So she's family now.
I guess.
You guess. Come on.
She's kind of
Isn't
his
Heather family?
Yeah, of course Heather's family, but I'm not clear that he married this girl. Like I'm not being snobby about it, but I'm saying, he nuzzles up like a kitten in her armpit. So it's like, did she ever become a legitimate wife, or was she just like the woman that kept his bed warm,
That's a good point. That's unclear here. It's clear that Ursula and Amaranta are not in attendance here. Mm-hmm. Or Jose Arcadio Buendia. Come on, he would have loved this.
Well, he's tied to a tree, so he's unable to come. But
untie him.
They could have had the wedding at his house.
We should start a flyer petition to untie Jose Arcadio Buendia.
we see a little awkward moment between Arcadio and Jose
I
Arcadio.
thought it was sweet. I thought it was sweet.
Well, he kind of goes the awkward pat in the back, and then he just walks away. It's not like they hug or no. And then you find out that Arcadio never finds out that that's his father.
That's right.
Just like he never finds out Pilar is his mother. So I found it kind of sad.
I can see. I'll give it to you. I'll let you be sad.
So then the newlyweds rent a house by the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
Must be very popular out there. There's no furniture but the famous hammock. And on their honeymoon night, a scorpion bites Rebeca on the foot. This has to be a bad omen of some kind.
It got to be. I mean, why would they even bring this up? Exactly. It shows that they're definitely outside of this whole political argument.
Right.
And just like Jose Arcadio Buendia always wanted to be, free of everything. And I have to, at this point, I don't even know if she listens to the podcast, but my friend Meg, I've talked about her before. She's my concert going pal from high school. She's the one that I would talk to, and we would share our crushes on other people. She lived in a house in front of the famous Hollywood Cemetery here in Richmond. So like when you go to Hollywood Cemetery, there's this big house right in front of it, very austere, like predominant home. And that's where Meg lived for many years. So shout out to Meg and her home in the cemetery, just like Rebeca. I think Meg eats dirt too, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
she's a hippie child,
Maybe you want everybody to know about her habits, Steve. So Aureliano goes to Caterino's, I guess, after the wedding to celebrate. He sits next to his old buddies. I think these were the two guys that set him up with the prostitute, set him up with the sex worker, perhaps.
His quote unquote friends. Yeah, that's right.
But now they're sort of not talking to him. He knows his presence has silenced the conversation. Now that he's showed up, they're not going to talk anymore. They kind of they make some remarks about, what would your father say? And Aureliano says he is neither conservative nor liberal, but if he had to choose, it would be liberal because all conservatives are frauds.
Well, these are all the ones that he knows. Yeah. All the ones that he's hanging around with.
That many.
Yeah, I guess not. Definitely Moscote and anybody that hangs out with him.
Yeah. So they take him to their secret hideout and they do the secret handshake. Just kidding. That doesn't happen. But
might as well.
They do their secret knock, though. And the doctor explains that they are planning a revolution and all conservative leaders will be killed. And Aureliano looks at the doctor and says, hey, Aureliano's got some good lines in this show. He says,
oh, yeah.
You're neither a revolutionary nor a liberal. You are a butcher. He gives him a verbal insult.
I couldn't agree more. They tell each other what they are at this point. But yeah, I think Aureliano is a very principled and nuanced stance here. And again, this is the type of person that I really like. He's like, yeah, you guys, I'm with y'all. I'm liberal. But if you try to come near Moscote and his daughters, I'm going to stand in your way. He has a very nuanced stance and he has his own principles. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Illyrio, insults him back and says he's too sentimental. He's a coward. And then this part made me laugh. He says, I'll take my bottle back. You give me the bottle back. It's like, take my mini bottle back. Get it back to me.
I have something weird about the subtitles here because I thought I was about to learn cool cuss words in Spanish. I'm going to say another bad word. I said a bad word earlier. I'm going to say another one because that's what he says to Aureliano here. He said, when you're watching, you're listening in Spanish and you're looking at the English subtitles because you're an English speaker like me. And it says, you're a coward. You're a fucking coward is what it says there in English subtitles. That's not what he actually said in Spanish. And I triple checked that. What he actually said in Spanish is, you're a coward. That's what you are, a coward. But they changed that in the English subtitles and also in the English dub as well, I guess to be more hardcore in English, I suppose. But I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, well, it's not this show isn't as explicit as we thought it was, no F-bombs in the original language. Pietro is continuing to come to the Buendia house on Tuesdays for lunch. Tuesday. Today's Tuesday.
That's today. Right. It's just like Aureliano likes to go over, keeps the thing going.
The dominoes and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's now seeing Amaranta with different eyes. Too late, Pietro. You had your chance, is my thought about that.
Exactly, yeah.
So Aureliano walks home and feels like he's being followed, and he is.
He is.
He finds out that the group sent somebody to follow him just in case, not to murder you.
No.
We weren't going to kill you. We're just following you because we know sooner or later you'll rat us out. And what were they going to do when he does that, I guess?
Murder him, probably.
Yeah.
These guys are serious.
Aureliano says that, he's not going to rat them out. But if they do try to kill Apolinar, he will stand and defend him.
Oh, this is the part that I said earlier where I like his conviction. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So a group of soldiers is walking through town. They show up at the schoolhouse and attack the revolutionaries. And
they kick them out.
Really Arcadio.
Yeah, they kick them out because they want to do their headquarters there.
The townspeople are very subdued. They're kind of walking around very scared because walking quickly, that kind of thing. And the doctor gets dragged out of his house. And Arcadio starts to protest what's going on, but Aureliano pulls him back. And Arcadio says, pick a side.
Sure, yeah, he does need to pick a side. He hasn't picked it yet. But Aureliano's got a point. He's like, if you step in the way, they're going to kill you too, because we see just that. If anybody gets in the soldiers' way, they will kill whoever gets in their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just kind of, the doctor is just unceremoniously shot.
Yeah, very much so. Without a trial. We got to make that clear. No trial.
And Aureliano goes to see Apolinar about this turn of events. Apolinar says, look, man, there's nothing I can do. My hands are tied.
He's eating his lunch.
Yeah, a state of emergency has been declared. That's out of my hand. What's interesting about this, they show the firing squad, going to shoot the doctor. And of course, we know that later on, Aureliano will also be shot by a firing squad. That's already been shared. It's not a spoiler.
Right.
But it's on my mind when I saw these men with the rifles. And Aureliano just kind of looks on in dismay at this happening while Apolinar is enjoying his breakfast. You don't want that coffee to get cold.
He makes a point of pointedly not, paying attention. Mm-hmm. And this is where watching it, because, Heather and I have watched it both in English language and Spanish. And this is where it's good to watch it in Spanish because the actor who plays Aureliano really puts on his big boy voice in this episode when he's talking to people and he's really getting into it. And when you watch it in English, I don't think the English dub actor does quite the justice to the lines.
They never do. So people are just being dragged out in the street and beaten up by soldiers now. The priest. What? The priest. Yeah, the priest is like, hey, what's going on here? And they just attack him. A woman is allowed to be attacked by a dog, a rabid dog, I guess.
A rabid dog, yeah.
I wasn't, obviously the soldiers, it was obvious that they got the dog somehow.
The whole thing was they didn't bother to try to treat the woman for her dog bite because they're like, she has rabies. Let's just kill her because a dog with rabies bit her. So we're just going to unceremoniously kill her too.
Yeah, and they didn't even just shoot her. They bashed her head in.
They wanted to save the bullets. Yep.
With the butt of her rifle until it sounds like a nice juicy melon.
Thanks.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. And Aureliano is just watching this go down, and the look of horror on his face is getting more and more profound.
Yeah, you can tell he's feeling the horror because They
Yeah.
kind of drop they make the sound that very, like kind of like an echoey sound, like almost like you're muted or deaf and you're not hearing things clearly. You can tell he's feeling very disconnected from events. He's getting sort of this glazed look on his face. So he then goes back home and changes his clothes into that of a commoner. He takes off his, fancy suit that he used to woo Remedios, and he does take with him these letters. And I think that these were the love letters that he wrote Remedios. I could be wrong about that, but he does take them as a memento. But he's wearing like commoner clothes, and Ursula tries to stop him. And he says, I'm the one in charge. I'm the captain now.
Oh, yeah.
Says this to Visitacion. He also says goodbye to his son, Aureliano Jose, and to Amaranta. Lastly, he says goodbye to Papa, who's still tied to the chestnut tree. And after he leaves the house, because he says goodbye one more time to Ursula, he goes to visit his friend and says, round up the men. And that they are going to get some weapons, and she's going to use their weapons against them.
Yeah, that's badass. Total badass stuff right there. We'll use their weapons against them. Yeah, he goes to visit Jose Arcadio. Did you skip over that, or are you getting ready to go into that?
That's the next scene.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about the family goodbyes.
Well, the fact that, he says goodbye in YU to Visitacion, which is nice. He's got a good rapport with everybody in the family. Everybody likes him, me included. So, so long live the revolution and fight well and come home safely, please.
All right. He's going to pay one last visit outside of town, though, and goes to visit his big brother.
Yeah.
And he wants to recruit him to their cause.
Perfect.
Jose Arcadio says, no thanks. I've done it all, brother. I've done all I wanted to do. And I'm now wanting to stay here with my bride. But he does throw him a crumb that, yes, he remembers the talks that he had with his brother, and that, why do you think we men fear death? And he wishes his brother luck, and that's the most he will do.
Yeah, and it's clear that Jose Arcadio is now like the Jose Arcadio Buendia. He's taken up the mantle now of the person that runs away from everything to go live a peaceful life away from society and away from everything. So that's what he's trying to do here. He'd be a perfect soldier. He could go in there and kick everybody's butt. All those conservatives. I know all those soldiers. He alone could do it. But he wants just to have a peaceful life with his wife.
Mm-hmm. And so a few of the men go creep into the schoolhouse, which has been requisitioned as a makeshift artillery and control room for the soldiers. And it's a really cool scene. It's a silent scene with just music.
It does a good justice to the set, like how much they built this set. And like they're, scaling over top of everything, and they're giving us clear views of this whole city. And I really love this scene too.
Yeah, they did the show is famous for its tracking shots, and this was a tracking shot of the schoolhouse and the sort of the layout and the order in which people get attacked. And Aureliano's right there in the middle of everything. He's no longer neutral.
No, he's the one who's like putting the orders down. So, why would he be in front of a firing squad later? Well, I'll bet it has something to do with this.
Yeah, the soldiers that are there demand a fair trial, but they are killed in the same unceremonious way that the doctor was. And probably if you put those scenes right next to each other of the men shooting the doctor and these men shooting the soldiers, I'm thinking the camera work is either just the same or mirrored. The way that the men are standing is probably very similar because they kind of go down the line and pan across all of them. And
exactly right. And the guy's like, you're going to kill me without a trial, which is the exact same thing that he did to the other guy. He killed him without a trial. And then they both have something to shout. The doctor shouts, live the revolution. And this guy is like, this is for the motherland, Colombia.
Yeah.
So, exactly. This is like they severanced it up. Severance season 2, episodes 1 and 2. And this is the same thing.
It's like whether it's soldiers or revolutionaries, the means are just as violent from the conservatives or the liberals.
Yeah. It's right. Yeah. Because both parties, that's the main thing I wanted to say earlier too, is like Macondo didn't want to do any of this. They just wanted to go to school, and Arcadio was having fun being the school teacher, and they were just kind of doing their thing. Mm-hmm. And then we had these two outside forces come to town and force everyone to choose. And yeah, no good for nobody.
Yeah. So then Arcadio asks if they are going to join General Medina, and Aureliano assigns Arcadio the role of military chief. Maybe not the best choice, because we've seen that Arcadio has a little bit of a violent streak from his interactions with Pilar, his force that he tried to use on her. But yeah. Aureliano then visits the home of the Moscotes, and he finds Apolinar locked in a wardrobe and promises that he and his family are safe.
Yep. He was pleading for his life in there. That was so pathetic. I didn't like that scene.
Yes.
But yeah, after the second or third watch, it was a lot more clear, because the first watch through, Arcadio says to Aureliano, "Are we joining the rebels? Are we joining the liberals?" And Aureliano says, "You're not. You're staying here to be the chief of the town. So you're now the head liberal of this town." The implication being, I am going to join the liberal army. I'm taking a big force with me to join these liberals, while you stay here and keep the liberal front, steady here in town with your guys. You're a Buendia. This is very nepotistic to leave another Buendia in charge. But he does it,
Yeah. And Moscote says that this is madness, son. What is this madness, son? And this is where the title comes from, because he says, this isn't madness, this is war, and don't ever call me son again. Call me Colonel Aureliano Buendia.
He gave himself that title. That's funny. Nobody christened him. He didn't earn that title. We're supposed to just kind of take it as it is, though. Okay, you're the colonel now, I guess. You're in charge. I was on board, though. Like I said, this really brought me back around. I was kind of down on Aureliano before, but I'm on board with him being colonel. I'd salute him and follow him into the battle.
Yeah, but you're right. It is kind of nepotism 101 for him to be like, I'm going to leave you in charge, brother. And it basically, so we were talking about how it's not that different. Now they're leaving Arcadio the same. It's like the magistrate, Mr. Moscote, was the magistrate, and he's the military chief. He's not a magistrate, but he's being left as the sole leader. So there's no checks and balances. He can basically do whatever he wants.
As the town teacher / principal, he already had a lead role in town. Mm-hmm. So people looked up to him as it was. I don't know if that's clear or not, but a lot of his students were older than him, and they all looked up to him. And they all met there. All the liberals met at the school, and he's the school teacher, the principal. So it is nepotism. Maybe that dude Marquez might have been a better leader, perhaps. But we can't downplay the role that he did play in town. Remember, all the kids wanted to study alchemy because he's a great teacher, and kids look up to him. So,
well, those were two little kids that were going to get a chemistry set, according to
two examples.
The only thing that was missing is a song, because I was like, this is almost how I was thinking of Les Mis, at the intermission of Les Mis, they sing that one day more.
I wouldn't object, but it would kind of come from out of the blue, I think. But I would like it. I like when that kind of thing happens sometimes. I thought this was a very Game of Thrones ending, personally. You did watch much Game of Thrones. A lot of Game of Thrones ending, they ended the episode with a army going down a path in the woods, and they have a cart, and there's horses, and there's music in the background, and they're going off to war, and it's victorious. That's how about I'd say 85% of the Game of Thrones episodes ended just like this one.
Yeah, it does end with we're marching. I mean, there was no drummer. There should have been a drummer there, doing a little
They
beat.
killed him. He died in the battle.
But yeah, that takes us. We've got 2 more episodes of this
Right.
part 1. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes next.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I love this one. I thought this was an A+ of an episode. If I was like ranking these episodes, I would probably this would be my favorite so far. And the general's name is Medina. We can't bypass funky cold Medina. I mean, come on.
Well, I know you had some research, and we might not have a lot of time to do a lot of that tonight, but is General Medina, is that a real person?
Let's see. I don't think so. But yeah, that's basically the gist was that, let's see. I'm going to see if I'm going to scan through any names. I just have names of places, not any individual names. But yeah, starting 1899 up through 1902, there was 1,000 Days War. It was civil war in Colombia, where the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party would do exactly what they did to the town of Macondo. Macondo is just an example of things that happened during this civil war. Some of the causes were like coffee prices and like tariffs were things. Political factors where the Liberal Party was excluded from important positions like in the government. So that was like the Liberals went to war because the Conservatives were not letting them be in the party. There was a third party involved, the Nationalists Party. But who won overall? Let's see. Maybe somebody from Colombia, because I have it looks like the war ensured the continued dominance of the Conservative Party in Colombia politics for the next 28 years. So yeah, in history, the Conservatives win, but right here, this battle for sure is the side of the Liberals with Aureliano stepping in. But yeah, we made it just in time here. I thought we were going to go long. I think I could have said a lot more than I did. I kind of held back a little bit. But I will say the curse of a podcaster watching these shows is having to pause it every 5 minutes and taking notes. I watched this show for the 3rd time today, hoping that I could just sit back and watch it and enjoy it. But no, I kept pausing it and taking notes. So that's just our curse. Do you do that as well, or do you get to sit back and watch it, Lindsay?
My process at this point is I watch it usually on Friday or Saturday. I watch it without taking any notes. And then on Monday, I sit down and I write my comments.
I guess I have the advantage of I've already watched it once, like binged it. So I do kind of have that advantage already. But I have yet to just sit back and watch an episode without taking notes and stopping it and then Googling something or checking out who the actor is. I'm just addicted. But yeah, we made it just in time here. Do you have anything you want to plug before we vacate here, Lindsay?
I will just plug that there was the Arts and Faith Top 10 Ecumenical Jury, which is the top 10 films that a group of us in the arts and faith community recommend for Christian audiences. And that was put out in January sometime. I was on that committee, and a couple of my fellow members and I have recorded a podcast where we will talk through those 10 movies. A lot of them are the same movies that are getting awards buzz.
No fair. I want to do that.
But that will be out. I need to edit that. I hosted that one, so I need to edit that, and it'll be out to the general public soon, and as well as a link to the list itself.
I'm so eager to hear what any of those movies are. Do you want to give us one, or would that be too much of a spoiler?
Well, I'll tell you one movie that made the list that would be Furiosa.
Furiosa?
Yeah, the Mad Max movie.
Yeah, interesting. That's an interesting one to recommend to Christians. Okay, but yeah, that's a very interesting pick. I haven't seen that one yet, so maybe I need to. I don't know. Do I need to?
Oh, I really enjoyed it, and it's on Netflix now, Steve.
So no excuses,
you really have
huh?
no excuse.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess Furiosa. Oh, here we come.
There's actually a bunch of movies on Netflix right now that landed like last week or the week before that Dune Part 2 is on there now as well.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I really did. I did not enjoy the Saturday Night movie. I was really looking forward to that Saturday Night movie. I'm a big SNL fan. Really love the SNL documentary that just came out. Really love the SNL music special, 2-hour music special that came out. Did not like this rendition of Saturday Night where they reenact like the first episode of Saturday Night Live being aired. I did not enjoy it at all. It was just very frenetic, fast-paced, hard to follow, cocaine-induced. So I can't recommend that. But it is on Netflix if you've been looking forward to seeing it. Don't take my recommendation. Maybe check it out.
I didn't get to watch that one either yet. I need to add it to my list. It was nominated for Best Ensemble Cast by the NC Film Critics, and I didn't get around to watching that one, but it was definitely one that people wanted for the people talked about the cast of that having good chemistry together.
That's what I was attracted to, and I almost made Heather go see it in theaters when it first came out, and I'm kind of glad now I didn't, because I didn't really enjoy the movie too much. I don't think seeing it in the theaters would have made it any more enjoyable. So, you can't win them all, especially with me.
But I guess that's it for tonight, Steve.
Yeah, we're already late for our next talk. So, we'll take off from here. But thanks, everybody, for listening. If you're still listening now, then you're hardcore. Thank you. Give us some feedback, and we'll be back next week with episode 7. And until then, always find water and shade and shoes. Bye.
Bye.